Thank you very much for coming tonight. Now, how's that volume? Is that okay? Very good. Now, I've always been extremely proud of my Chinese heritage. I'm half Chinese, half Scottish, and the Chinese side of our family has been in Australia since the gold rushes in the 1850s. So we go back a very long way. And when I was a kid, I was always very boastful and said, the Chinese invented everything. They invented paper, they invented silk, they invented the automatic opening door, they invented the pinhole camera, they invented toilet paper, golf, football. You see, you thought that football came from somewhere else. The Chinese did it. The fishing reel, the wheelbarrow. They even invented the fork before they moved on to the chopstick. But perhaps a testament to the brilliance of the Chinese people is the first emperor, China's entombed warriors that we see at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. And it's not only the remarkable story of one man's quest for immortality, it's also a testament to the brilliance of the 700,000 people, artisans and ordinary folk who toiled to create this eighth wonder of the world. And I was a kid when I first heard the story about this accidental discovery of these amazing terracotta men being unearthed. And being a kid, I was, I have to admit, extremely confused because the only terracotta men that I had ever heard of were Bill and Ben, the flowerpot men. Do you remember them? I grew up with them. They were on telly after school, BBC Classic. So you've got, for those of you who didn't grow up with Bill and Ben, the flowerpot men, you've got Bill, you've got Ben, and you've got their friend, the little weed. And you can sing along if you like. Ben goes, walla walla walla, and Ben goes, walla walla walla, and the weed goes, weed, weed. So you can imagine my confusion. Terracotta men, they're the ones I grew up with, and could you ever work out what the hell they were talking about? Well, I have it on very good authority that Bill, Ben and the little weed were actually having an academic discussion about the man known as Ying Zheng, born in 259 BC in China, the son of the king of the Qin Empire, and a man who ascended to the throne at the age of 13, who took over control at the age of 22, a formidable and some say very dangerous man. In 221 BC, he established the first ever centralised empire in Chinese history, and this was the birth of the Qin dynasty, and as its first emperor, Yin Zheng, proclaimed himself Qin Shi Huang, Huang meaning emperor and Shi meaning the first. Now, in a bid to consolidate and stabilise the empire, Qin Shi Huang brought in a raft of reforms, including autocratic control of the regions. And after the unification of China, with all other schools of thought absolutely banned, legalism became the endorsed ideology of the Qin dynasty. Now, legalism was basically, you do what the law says or face the consequences. So in economy, he prioritised agriculture and commerce and introduced tax reform. He began connecting existing walls to create the Great Wall of China and constructed an extensive network of roads and canals, standardised the written language, money, weights and measures, and abolished feudalism. Qin Shi Huang was influenced by the concept of yin and yang, as well as the theory of the 5 elements: earth, wood, metal, fire, and water. And it was believed that the royal house of the previous dynasty, Zhao, had ruled by the power of fire, which was symbolised by the colour red. So Qin had to go down the list to the next element, and that element was water, which is represented by the colour black. So black became the colour for all garments, flags and pennants, and the emperor was often represented in artworks wearing his black robes. I like the look myself. So one of the first projects that the young king took on was the construction of his own tomb. And in 215 BC, Qin Shi Huang ordered that 700,000 non-paid workers begin construction. Now, he was absolutely obsessed with immortality, and he wanted his tomb to be a subterranean palace that would contain everything that he needed in the afterlife. And later in his life, Qin Shi Huang feared death so terribly, he desperately searched for the elixir of life, and that would allow him to live forever. He was obsessed with acquiring immortality. So, determined to live for as long as possible, he sent his scouts out all over China in search of the elixir of life. The emperor died during one of these tours, and reportedly he died after ingesting cinnabar, which is a mineral which contains mercury sulfide. And ironically, the mixture was made up for him by his scientists and physicians to ensure his long life. Qin Shi Huang died at the age of 49. Cinnabar is the popular name given to describe Chinese lacquerware, and the Chinese have been using it for centuries. The mineral cinnabar was ground into a pigment and then mixed with the lacquer to give the piece a beautiful deep red colour. Now, mercury is present in the mineral, and when true cinnabar is used as a pigment, it actually can be quite dangerous, and just handling some of the lacquerware can leach mercury onto your skin. So fortunately, a lot of the antique pieces you see have a coating over the top, so we're all pretty safe. But today, cinnabar is used in jewellery. We ourselves, in fact, like to wear it very much, and we're safe because this is a resin, so this is a new cinnabar without the mercury content. So it's such a beautiful look, we love to use it today. But mercury, interestingly, besides killing poor old Emperor Qin, pops up in hat making, and you may have heard the term mad as a hatter, and we tend to associate that with the Mad Hatter character in Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And the reason that hatters were kooky was that they were affected by the fumes from mercury, which was used in working with the pelts, and the resulting mercury poisoning caused severe neurological damage. So the hatters would put the mercury on the fur, and that would help the fur lift up, and they could get more off the pelt. In Stockport in England, much of the hat industry was a very, very thriving business. And apparently in cemeteries around Stockport, they're contaminated with the mercury from rotting bones of dead hatters. In Danbury, Connecticut, another huge hat-making area, they were making 1 million hats a year. And for some reason, the people in Danbury had this condition called the Danbury Shakes, and they didn't know what was causing it. It was the mercury. And mercury wasn't banned from hat making in the United States until 1941. So it took us a very long time to learn from Emperor Qin's misfortune with mercury. It's a bit like when the Romans were drinking water out of lead pipes and they were slowly being poisoned by lead poisoning, or our concern when babies chew on cots that are painted with lead paint. Anyway, so the emperor died from mercury poisoning. And his prime minister was extremely concerned that with the death of the emperor, there would be an uprising in the land. So he wanted to keep the emperor's death a secret. Now, the trouble was that it would take 2 months for the entourage to get back to the capital. So they've got this dead emperor in a wagon. Now, how are we going to disguise the fact that he's dead? So what they did was, the Prime Minister, Li Si, brought in 2 carts of rotting fish, 1 cart before the emperor's, 1 cart behind. The idea behind this was no one would notice that the emperor was on the nose because the whole entourage smelt. Now, most of the imperial entourage had no idea that the emperor had died, and what they did was they pulled down the blinds on his wagon, they dressed him in new clothes every day, they bought him food and pretended to have conversations with the dead man. Only his younger son, who was travelling with him, and his advisors and Li Si, the Prime Minister, knew about the death. So 2,200 years after his death, Emperor Qin did receive recognition and immortality of sorts with the discovery of his burial site. Now, discovered in 1974 and opened to the public in 1979, the ancient site is now one of the world's greatest tourist attractions and arguably the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century. Emperor Qin's terracotta army was created to serve the emperor in his afterlife, and 8,000 life-size warriors, horses, chariots, bronze weapons were there to guard the emperor. Now, it's said that Emperor Qin wanted his legacy to last for thousands of years, and that for his dynasty would be the perpetual rulers of China. But perhaps he achieved part of that dream because the name China comes from Qin. Now, have you been considering how on earth a 13-year-old could come up with this amazing plan? I mean, he just ascended the throne, he's 13 years old, and the first thing he wants to do is create this underground army to protect him in the afterlife. What sort of ego did this 13-year-old boy have? Maybe you have a 13-year-old boy at home and you might be able to answer that question. Or who advised him? Was it his Prime Minister who thought that this was a legacy he needed to carry on? And if he truly believed that he would be immortal, is it not ironic that he would create an army to protect him in the afterlife when he was supposed to live forever? And can you imagine the discovery of the first of the items with the face or hand coming through the dirt and the excitement of the treasures that were revealed? And it's estimated that it would take 150 days to create one warrior, even longer to create one of the horses. And I've been trying to imagine the size of the kilns that were used to create these pieces. Where were the kilns? How many pieces could fit into the kiln at one time? And then after the firing, the figures were painted in wonderful colours. So this was not an army of drab, colourless soldiers, but a living, vibrant and colourful representation. Unfortunately, exposure to the air and light has depleted a lot of the original colorations, and it just hasn't lasted when the figures came out of the ground. The Terracotta Warrior Museum at Xi'an has been working with a cultural relics department in Germany, trying to find the technology to preserve the original pigments, but unfortunately the progress is quite slow. But it is hoped that when they do discover it, that the freshly unearthed treasures will retain eventually their colours. Perhaps they look a little like this. A bit scary, they look so elegant downstairs, don't they? The different colours were applied to different parts of the warriors and the horses. The hands and the faces were primarily pink. Red, vermilion, burgundy, dark green and sky blue were used for the robes for the infantry. Their trousers were dark green or pastel green. The army consisted of main categories of the high-ranking officer, armoured and unarmoured soldiers, charioteer, cavalryman, kneeling archer and standing archer. And the various headdresses and uniforms and armour distinguished the military ranks from one soldier to another. The headdress distinguishes officers from ordinary soldiers, and the terracotta general is dressed in a fabulous long double-layer uniform, and he's decorated with ribbons, and his headdress is in the form of a double-tailed bird, which is a symbol of bravery and skill on the battlefield. And the detail in each of the pieces is just astonishing. The standing archer would have worn an unarmoured red robe which was fastened around the waist with shin guards and short boots, and his hair was tied neatly up in a little top knot on the top of his head, and his right foot was turned over and he was poised as if to shoot his crossbow. The cavalryman would have worn a dark brown tight-fitting armour, and beneath the belted waist the robe would be pleated with full folds, and a small fitting tight cap fastened under his chin, and was originally painted a reddish brown to suggest leather. Now, I love the fact... What happened there? There'll be now a small break in transmission while we work out what happened to the image. Don't you love technology? Just getting to the good bit. There it goes. How many of you been downstairs to see the exhibition? Don't you love the fact that all their faces are different, and that's only 10 out of 8,000? Incredible. We'll come back to the images shortly. So the fact that no two warriors had the same face is incredible to me, and we're back, almost. And I would imagine incredible to you. And I find that the cavalryman actually looks a lot like one of my uncles. Oh, he's back. But it's not on my screen anymore, so I'll be doing this a lot. And so the faces are all different, they're all individual. And people have the audacity to say that all Chinese look alike. I don't know, although, sorry Mum, I was meeting my family at a Chinese restaurant one night and I was running a bit late, and it was one of those giant restaurants in Chinatown, and I'm standing at the front and I'm looking across this sea of black heads trying to find my family, who said all Chinese look alike. Now, there's a magnificent suit of armour that some of you have already seen downstairs. Did you see that? It's made of limestone, and it's made up of little squares of stone, and they're held together with copper wire. And the armour from Chin's day would have been made from leather or metal. And I was standing looking at this armour and I thought, oh, this is reminding me of something. And it reminded me of the most stunning jacket that I saw at the Alexander McQueen store in the meatpacking district in New York. So my husband and I were in there for a bit of fun because we can't afford the shop. And the jacket was made up of tiny strips of leather, and on the end of each strip was a little buckle. Beautiful. Each of the strips, about 1 centimetre wide, was sewn together to create this armoured effect of leather. And the girl in the store could see that I was in deep lust with this piece. And she was gorgeous. She was very petite, and she was wearing this little Alexander McQueen dress with black thongs. And I have to tell you, I have never seen thongs look so good as on this girl. So she's watching me looking at this jacket, and she says, "You should try it on." Yeah, I should try it on. Let's just try it on for fun, because the jacket was $12,000 US. So I tried it on, and I've got it on, and it fitted perfectly. But it fitted so perfectly, in fact, that I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move anything. And I mentioned to the girl that if I wanted to bend my arm to have a drink, I couldn't bend. And if I was going to buy a $12,000 jacket, I'd want a stiff drink. Or if I came to an opening at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, I couldn't bend my arm to drink a celebratory champagne. "Oh," she replied, "you can't move. That's because it's a standing jacket." A $12,000 jacket you can't move in. More like standing armour. So I've worked out that's probably why the standing archers don't wear armour, because they can't bend their arms to shoot the crossbow. So besides my standing jacket, I had an epiphany while I was looking at the armour, and I thought, no, it's reminding me of something else. Fast forward from 2,200 years ago to the 1960s. And in the 60s, the fashion world was swept by futuristic designs, and Franco-Spanish designer Paco Rabanne made his successful debut in 1966 by making a dress made entirely out of plastic. Rabanne was the enfant terrible of the French fashion world, and he was using unconventional materials like paper and metal for his outlandish and flamboyant designs. Now, many of his dresses were made from metal, and they're put together in the same way as that armour downstairs. So Rabanne was using similar techniques, securing metal links with wire. His metal armour-plated dresses were absolutely revolutionary and unexpected, and shook the establishment. But taking a leaf out of Paco Rabanne's book, you may remember Australian designer Lizzie Gardner, who won an Oscar in 1995 for her costumes for the film Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And she caused quite a stir at the 67th Academy Awards when she went up on stage to collect her award wearing a dress made of 254 gold American Express cards. So the technique that she employed to create the dress was pure pakaraban, but may we suggest that it was also inspired by the ancient armour downstairs and the techniques that were created 2,200 years ago. Now, I particularly love the headgear and the hairstyles of the terracotta army, and since the head is also an important part of the body, the Chinese reason that it deserves some sort of respect, and it should be either covered or elaborately done in a do. So the soft caps that tie under the chin, the jaunty cap with its little point to one side, the top knot. The hairstyle that has endured and continues to inspire the top models and hairstylists is the top knot. Now, Buddha came first. So did the terracotta army get their inspiration for their hairdos from Buddha? Is that where it all began? Or early migrant groups in southern India had their own top knot, and this was known as the mun kundumi, and the hair's grown long in the front and knotted to the forehead. Or the chonmage in the Japanese tradition, which was commonly associated with the Edo period and the samurai, and only in modern times is worn by the sumo. Even Harry Kuehl fancies a top knot. In the 1920s, the world had an absolute love affair with the turban, and it could be twisted to create a top knot on the side. And this trend came back in the 1960s and was popularised by the lovely Twiggy. But the top knot is a sleek and functional and elegant hairdo, favoured by fashion stylists, and features on the international runways around the world. And this is pure terracotta warrior style. But have a look at this. You've seen the braided hairdos downstairs, the top knot with braiding, 2,200 years on. Even grumpy Posh Spice Beckham likes a top knot. And the hairdos of Emperor Qin's terracotta warriors have had an influence on reality television. Winner of MasterChef 2010, Adam Liao. He takes his look from the archer and light infantryman. And this guy looks like an entombed warrior. So we go from the head to the toe. Now, when you have a look at the armoured kneeling archer in the exhibition, you'll notice the sole of his shoe. And you'll see that there are many circles incised in the sole, and they're clustered together more in the toe and heel area, and they're spread out more in the centre part. And carbon dating has actually helped us Carbon dating has helped us to determine the actual shoe size of the armour presented in the exhibition downstairs. Now, this is clever stuff, clever design. And does that remind you of something? Perhaps some of you in the audience tonight are wearing a pair of athletic shoes. The same style of grip that makes your shoe functional so that you don't slip. That ancient grip that lends itself to the modern athletic shoe. And we keep reinventing the runner and the tennis shoe and the aerobic shoe, but they've all got the warrior grip. Now, according to Professor Peter McNeill in his book Shoes, A History from Sandals to Sneakers, the ancient Greeks also had texture on the bottom of their sandals, but this was for quite another reason. Greek courtesans, or streetwalkers, would nail studs into the bottom of their sandals so that they could spell out messages for would-be customers. And another source tells us that one of the messages spelt out by the studs was, "Follow me." Among the 120 objects on display in the first emperor, China's entombed warriors, are intricate items in jade, and bronze. And they give us an insight into the adornment of the time, the craftsmanship, and the importance of the symbolism of the artefacts. The contemporary designs of Claudia Chan Shaw reference these pieces, using a mixture of antique and contemporary jade pendants. Beautiful one-off pieces are created with the Qin dynasty as their inspiration. Jade is mixed with onyx, garnet, smoky quartz, and contrasted to the intricate, cool beauty of the jade carvings. Now, since their discovery in 1974, Emperor Qin's terracotta warriors have influenced everything from the world of fashion to the art world and even science fiction. In the 1985 novel Contact by Carl Sagan, the main character is visited by an alien in the form of Emperor Qin. In the Area 51 book series, Qin Shi Huang is revealed to be an alien exile stranded on Earth during an interstellar civil war. The Great Wall is actually designed to display the symbol for help in his language, and he orders it built in the hope that a passing spaceship will notice it and take him back to his planet. In Hydra's Ring, the 39th novel in the Outlander series, Qi Shi Huang is revealed to be still alive in the early 23rd century through extraterrestrial nanotechnology and has finally achieved immortality. And in a Hong Kong supernatural TV series from 1999 called My Date with a Vampire 2, there's a flashback scene showing Qin Shi Huang being tricked into believing that being turned into a vampire will give him the key to immortality. So it's no wonder that the story captured the imagination of the sci-fi writers, because, here's the scenario. A ruler thinks he is immortal and builds an underground army of 8,000 attendants to look after him in the afterlife. Meaty stuff, stranger than fiction. It's catching on. People want to look like the warriors, dress like them, be them. In China, in the street, not so long ago, guy walking along on his mobile phone, having a chat, calmly, dressed as a terracotta warrior. Or in 2006, a German art student was so enamoured with the warriors that he made his own dusty brown uniform, and he headed off to Xi'an to join the army. Can you see him? Where's Wally? Identified only as Pablo, or by his Chinese name Ma Ling, he entered the museum with his suit in his suitcase. He changed into his outfit, jumped over the railings, and joined the terracotta army. He blended in so well that security had a hard time finding him. Pablo told the authorities that since he was a kid, he'd been in love with the terracotta warriors. He only made the suit so he could have his picture taken next to him. Seeing them lined up there, he got so excited he just had to get in the pit. As he did no damage and his only crime was over-enthusiasm, Pablo was released after a stern warning and a lecture from officials. Does anybody know what that says? Contemporary artists have also taken their inspiration from the Guardian Army. Chinese artist Lu Fenghua created his own army in his exhibition Terracotta Warriors and Horsemen. And Lu painted leading 20th century figures on his version of the warriors. So from Mao Zedong to Mickey Mouse to Sun Yat-sen, he even had Andy Warhol's Marilyn Monroe screen print and an American flag blazoned across the front of his warriors. Chinese-born San Francisco-based artist Wan Zhang grew up during Chairman Mao's oppressive Cultural Revolution. So this is his reaction. He was drawn to American culture but was also inspired by the terracotta warriors. So his large-scale figures are marked by this collision of culture, and he draws on the dress, the hair, the calligraphy and style of the Chinese, but he mixes it with American iconography, Mickey Mouse ears, basketballs, and even one of his figures had a camera slung over its shoulder as a 2,000-year-old tourist. Artists are absolutely fascinated by the important and tremendous archaeological find. And the director of the Art Gallery of New South Wales, Edmund Capon, is opening an exhibition tomorrow night by Adam Chang called Mao, Terracotta Army and Myself. Now, some ancient figures were recently unearthed along Melbourne's docklands on the Yarra River. Their worn bodies have a patina that reveals that they are very, very old. But they're actually part of an exhibition called the Yarra River Cargo by Australian artist Dale Cox, and he's removed their heads and replaced them with 20th century pop icons like Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse and Minnie. His finalist entry in the Helen Lempriere National Sculpture Prize in 2006 was entitled Werribee River Cargo and was presented as an excavation, and his entombed warriors all have the head of Mickey Mouse. The sporting world is even getting in on the act. French sculptor Laurie de Zingremel was commissioned to create artwork to commemorate the 2007 Masters Cup in Shanghai, and the Association of Tennis Professionals asked him to come up with tennis stars in the style of the Terracotta Warriors. There they are. Only 5 to go. So statues of Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic were commissioned, and each warrior stands holding his tennis racket. Now, even I want to style myself on the Terracotta Warriors. That noble courage and dignity, that devotion and stoicism. 2,200 years on, we're still being influenced by the Terracotta Army. So I've started with the headgear, and I'm working on the rest of the outfit now, so maybe we can get together next week and I can show you the ensemble and show you how I've gone. Thanks for coming tonight. Good night.